7:38 in the morning, West Coast time, Thursday, the 10th of October, 2024. We were John Cero's in California, going nuts at this point, or just waking up at the same time. Saw the damage online, and also pictures and vids about what happened with Milton. Reporters are going all over the place trying to get as much information as they can of how much widespread damage that Milton did. Bands of energy last night or yesterday came onto the Florida Peninsula and tore it apart with Tornado Alley. 3 million without power. It meant death and destruction. The hurricane's already out to sea. Already a Cat 1. But it did its damage across a huge swath of damage. I'm looking at the bids coming. Every time we get into a hurricane situation, it's always the same. More deaths, more destruction. It takes them a long while to get places rebuilt. There had been at one time there was a hurricane, I couldn't remember the name of it, that tore apart Homestead, a military base that Air Force actually had, and it got destroyed by a lot of wind and flooding. And that was a few decades ago. When hurricanes keep visiting the Florida Peninsula, they would brush against coastlines but not move across the peninsula itself, like from east to west or west to east. And like Milton, that formed out off of the Yucatan Peninsula as a tropical storm, gathered a lot of heat energy, and within hours was a tropical from a tropical to a hurricane level. About a high category 4 going across, and then the landmass was taking up all the energy, but it still had enough energy to flatten most of Florida. And they're looking at it right now. A lot of reporters are talking about the wind speeds, how the movement was, how the flooding was, how it affected a lot of communities. A whole number of them. Even retirement communities that tried to get out of its way, but it couldn't because there's that much energy flattening everything. Every year I see maybe 5, maybe less, but they come in and sneak out through into the Gulf waters, into the Caribbean. But I hadn't seen in my lifetime one forming off the coast of Mexico in the warm Gulf waters and just blast away. So now they still have clouds in the area for some, and they did a lot of flooding to a lot of businesses. So right now, they're going to be talking about this a great deal. When it comes down for hurricanes, people don't take it for granted because they know what can be done. And they've seen lifetimes of how hurricanes can tear apart things left and right. But this one was just going across the peninsula once as a hurricane, weakened, then goes back into the waters again, continue its job. And they already had Helene do some damage on the west coast of Florida. I am stunned, shocked, and it's going to take a while for even some of the companies out there who've made entertainment, how they're going to be getting themselves rebuilt. Tampa was one of those shipping ports that they wanted to get going. Not to mention Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Canaveral. Those are major shipping ports too. They also have people stranded out in the waters. And they got to come back in. Roads have got to be cleared. Infrastructure has got to be looked at whether or not people can actually get out of there or not. And then there's the airports. I haven't come across news stories yet, but I imagine they are, concerning about how the airports and shipping ports are. They want the cargo to come in so they can get the emergency supplies and regular supplies coming in. Get commerce started up again. But the cruise ships out there need a safe port to put in. And they want to know whether or not if they actually can get in there or not. If they can, cool. But if they can't, then they got an issue, don't they? Because how do they discharge the people? I was coming across reports of how people were looking at the damages and people on cruise ships. One of them I know, Don Terrace, he was wondering why couldn't they just got the ship in before they closed the ports. And I guess Port Authority was saying no, not yet. Even if they did, they still have to get past the damn hurricane. They have to get the ships out of the way. Sorry, allergies are kicking my ass. You know, it may sound jaundiced about these people going through this thing. There's nothing jaundiced about having floodwaters coming from the Gulf, entering a home, and completely destroying it and the people's lives at the same time. I may feel sorry for some of the people on the cruise ships. I mean, if they actually had homes in Florida. There was one family I was worried about, Barnett's, Tony and Jenny B. I was hoping that they made it through. Almost sounded like they did. They were doing a live streaming last night, just before power went out. Things went nuts and they lost some power out there. They were the fortunate ones. They lived close to Tampa. But looking at what I'm seeing, some of the pictures that are being sent over to the news agencies, wind and rain and floodwaters. I complain a great deal and make a joke out of it regarding hurricanes versus earthquakes. I'm well aware of the damage that hurricanes can do. Having watched these scenes play out every year for several decades of my life, I'd seen the damages in a lot of communities. And they have to keep rebuilding left and right. And it's not that easy dealing with places that have to rebuild themselves or go out of business. I heard the political claptrap coming from politicians saying that they're not going to get that much disaster money. How dare they? And they're going to be stuck. Wrong, because FEMA's going to have to pull out everything it can to take care of the damages from Helene and now Milton. And the government's going to have to start making the bills necessary for them to get some more emergency relief funding for it. When they say about 750 or 850 that they're going to get, actually 750, that was being reported over to people who suffered Helene. FEMA wasn't joking. It was just for an immediate relief, and then afterwards, I don't know if they're going to be doing the loans that they have to pay back eventually. I don't know. But this is an emergency and you don't argue with it. But other people may argue with it because they're hearing from other crap that they hadn't gone through hurricanes as much and don't know what they're talking about. But it's still tragic and it's still a nightmare. So how is one supposed to deal with it anyway? You shake it off and move it on, and if you're a Floridian or people lived on the Gulf Coast with the hurricanes, you shake the damn thing off and get on with it. You become jaundiced and you deal with the devastation. Out here in the West Coast, we deal with the earthquakes irregularly. But it's a regular business on the East Coast. It's regular. No wonder they have to have tougher skins in certain areas. Because out here in the West Coast, Pacific area, we don't have that we don't have that luxury. It's not a luxury. What am I saying? We don't have the experience and we don't have that toughness. We deal with earthquakes, yes, but they're infrequent. They're irregular. And they strike without warning in different areas that we don't even realize. If we had gotten word somehow that an earthquake fault was forming and it was going to cause some damages, if we actually had that predicted, maybe we could have avoided it like crazy. But earthquakes you can't predict. And I make a lousy joke to a lot of people about it. I said, I'll trade you a hurricane over an earthquake any day. At least you can see the hurricane coming. Yeah. Only because I know the devastation a hurricane can cause. More devastation than an earthquake can. The earth shifting, the vibrations of the movement shift around that spot. A hurricane, it's all over the place. Doesn't matter if the owl comes on your area or not. You still got the bands to deal with. You still get the floodwaters if they're coming in. You still get the torrential rains picked up by the moisture. And you also have tornadoes. They have more complications with a hurricane than they would have an earthquake. But as I said before, at least you can see the bastard coming. And you'll have a little bit more warning about what may or may not hit your area. But I can't I can't continue on with that joke. It's a weird ass analogy I've got. If you see a storm system coming across the states, what they call Tornado Alley, there's a section between the Rockies and all the way to the Appalachians. There's a wide area that tornadoes would hit, usually in the farm belt areas. And unstable air would mix in with each other, and then you have these tornadoes hitting and whatever. Hurricane is an unstable force of nature. We joked about it in California. I mean, a lot of people thought, well, since we've seen the East Coast, the West Coast having a hurricane once in its lifetime, well, that's pretty much really unstable weather. Seeing a hurricane forming off the coastline and moving with the trade winds or pressure gradients pushing it into California that year. And people were having a conniption fit. They were running around, and I'm looking at the thing thinking, this is nothing compared to the East Coast. You kidding me? Come on. Use your head. Use your head on this one. Sorry. But people don't use their heads. They panic. I panic about earthquakes a little bit because going through a lot of them, you don't know when they're going to hit. Fine, that's the unexpected thing, so you deal with that on a constant basis. But then you try to prep what you can and what you can deal with and what you can survive on. You get your dried food, food that's going to be lasting for a long while. If you're going to be able to eat it and live off the damn thing and not choke on it or do stuff. But you have enough water. I don't have enough water. It's usually 1 gallon per person per day. Well, sometimes the water won't be replaced fast enough. So you have to make do with what you got or go searching for more fresh water somewhere. I managed to carry about a dozen containers of milk carton filled waters just in case. I have to recycle and replenish. And I've got filters just in case. I can filter out some of the water. If I'm in a flooding situation, I'm lousy, but I'll try to survive on that one. But I'm not in a flooding situation. I'm in an earthquake prone area. I'm more worried about the apartment collapsing on me. I'm also more worried about the power lines collapsing on me. It hasn't been enough sufficient wind out here, about 40 to 50 maybe, if we're lucky enough to get the good desert winds coming through. And they blow. They blow. And I still have to watch out for things blowing down. But I look at it as normal. 30 or 40 miles per hour is normal. 50, almost less. But we're talking about 60 and 70. We never got to that particular position. So when that storm came in a couple of years back and they said it was a hurricane, I'm like, this ain't a hurricane, guys. This isn't a hurricane. Tropical depression, maybe. But it's not hurricane destruction. We're safe. I knew because of the area in my surroundings. The landscape, the topography, the energy level it needed to maintain its strength and wind. A hurricane derives and thrives on warm water. It sucks up the energy to live. Every time we have hurricanes flying through the Caribbean and the East Coast, it's you want to live out there. It's a trade-off that you have. You deal with the hurricanes, you deal with the tornadoes, you deal with the floodwaters. But nobody could have predicted that sometimes the hurricanes could fly through and flood out an entire state if necessary. But that's the thing you deal with on a constant basis. And nobody likes it because there's no way of surviving the damn thing. My hearts and prayers go out for those people out there. And this is the disaster that they have to trade off of. And it's insane. It's insane.